Oh, I am live. Hello. Making sure I got all the lipstick right. Hi. So sorry I was late. I was talking to Evelyn at the door and lost track of time. And we're not going to actually start the chapter until Evelyn gets home so she can listen to it. But we are going to hang out, which I think will be nice. Strepsils. Oh man, again. I did it again. I didn't have a strepsil before I started recording, so I'm going to have to just... So, lockdown is pretty weird. Pretty surreal. Not as weird, really, as the things that Emily Bronte's characters do. But, yeah. Not too bad. Also, I was going to wear a wig today, but I couldn't find the one I wanted, so I have to settle for the fake fringe. It's half a wig. Wow, we're quite a ways through the book, actually. So, to recap yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. You're here. I can't start reading the actual chapter until Evelyn gets home. Mr. Fitz. Come on. Good boy. I should have called him Heathcliff, you fucker. Oh well. Yes, Evelyn just did a mercy delivery, some medication, and she is heading home now, so we're not going to start the chapter till she gets there, but that's fine because we always recap. So in the last chapter, which was actually really long, Isabella comes home to Thrushcross Grange. It was a few days after Kathy dies. That's okay. I'm happy you're here at all, Josh. Very happy. Can't tell who it is my makeup's reminding me of today. What? Do you have a second D&D wife as well? Oh my god. This is like imaginary Tiger Woods. I don't really remember much about the scandal, so it probably isn't. But yeah, Isabella comes home to Thrushcross Grange, having escaped Heathcliff while he was going mental after Catherine died. And she kind of tells her story to Nellie, even though she's like, I can only just get changed and then get a carriage to Gimmerton and stay away forever. But for some reason, she's able to tell quite a long story before she does that. So she talks about how Heathcliff, how Hindley dies. No, Hindley doesn't die until after Isabella leaves. You know what? Fuck it. If you want to know exactly what order things happen in, you can go to the previous video. I don't care. Do I, Fitz? So Hindley dies. Possibly. Come on, Fitz. Hindley dies, and Edgar or Isabella or someone, they're like, hey, can we have his son, please? Because I don't want to leave him with Heathcliff. And the bank is like, well, Hindley owed Heathcliff a lot of money. He mortgaged the house to him. So basically, yeah, at the moment, Heathcliff owns his house and his son. I'm sure that's fine. Come on. Come on. What's that? Come on. I can see the little paws. You take it? Come on. Yes, he's here. You're here, aren't you? Good boy. Look, look. He's using his sense of smell like he can't actually see or smell or touch. Mother's simple baby. Nice. Isn't it nice? Lovely little bear. Just gonna leave him in the background. You're fluffy bear. You're doing it. This is such a good recap. He's getting way too many treats just for clicks and likes. It's shameful. Good boy. All gone. See? All gone. I had to teach them that. Ivy still doesn't know it. Right. Yes. Hindley didn't go to Catherine's funeral, but that was because Heathcliff did something fucked up to him. Can't remember. Hello. Sorry. Okay. Right, yes, so Isabella goes to Gimmerton and she stays there. Because as she says, Heathcliff might chase her to Thrushcross Grange, but he's not interested enough in her in any way to carry on any further than that. So she fucks off to another town where she has a baby named Linton. So now, after all the Earnshaws and Heathcliffs and Lintons and everything in the book, we now have a child named Linton Heathcliff. So that's going to make everything a lot easier. And then about 12 years later, she dies. And Linton Heathcliff has to come back. And Hareton Earnshaw is in Heathcliff's care. Hareton, who should now be the first gentleman in the neighbourhood, was reduced to a state of complete dependence on his father's inveterate enemy and lives in his own house as a servant, deprived of the advantage of wages, quite unable to right himself because of his friendlessness and his ignorance that he has been wronged. And on the subject of Nellie being the actual villain of Wuthering Heights, you'd think she could have told Hareton that at some point. You know? Like, hey, I'm sorry you're growing up like in a way that sucks, but your dad was in a lot of debt to Heathcliff. So if you cleared the debt somehow, like by doing whatever Heathcliff did to get rich, yeah, that's your house actually. I don't know, but she doesn't. She doesn't do anything unless it directly benefits her. And I actually am quite glad that there's an actual scholarly article out there being like Nellie is the villain, because I thought it was just my horrible, suspicious mind. Okay. I'm just waiting on Evelyn now. Oh, okay. She says, don't wait for me. I'll wuther with you soon as I'm home. Okay, and that was 4 minutes ago. So, starting the chapter now, we'll recap. So I'll recap the first beginning of the chapter when Evelyn gets here. She doesn't need a recap of everything. But first I'm going to chew up this lozenge. It tastes wonderful. Ugh. And we're 10 minutes in. That was good timing. Wuthering Heights, Chapter 18. For 12 years, continued Mrs. Dean, following that dismal period were the happiest of my life. My greatest troubles in their passage rose from our little lady's trifling illnesses, which she had to experience in common with all children, rich and poor. Was it your birthday today? You fucker, no one told me. I have to do something. I don't know what. I'm going to read the chapter and think at the same time. Oh, no, I'm not. Too hard. I'm going to think. And when lockdown's lifted, Missy, and we can travel to Gore, you are getting a birthday. I'm furious with you. Happy birthday. Yes, all right. For the rest, after the first 6 months, she grew like a larch and could walk and talk too in her own way before the heath blossomed a second time over Mrs. Linton's dust. She was the most winning thing that ever brought sunshine into a desolate house. A real beauty in the face, with the Earnshaw's handsome dark eyes, but the Lintons' fair skin and small features, and yellow curling hair. Her spirit was high, though not rough, and qualified by a heart sensitive and lively to excess in its affections. That capacity for intense attachments reminded me of her mother. Still, she did not resemble her. She could be soft and mild as a dove, and she had a gentle voice and pensive expression. Her anger was never furious, her love never fierce. It was deep and tender. However, it must be acknowledged she had faults to foil her gifts. A propensity to be saucy was one. Guilty. And a perverse will that indulged children invariably acquire, whether they be good-tempered or cross. If a servant chanced to vex her, it was always, "I shall tell papa." And if he reproved her, even by a look, you would have thought it a heartbreaking business. I don't believe he ever did speak a harsh word to her. He took her education entirely on himself and made it an amusement. Fortunately, curiosity and a quick intellect made her an apt scholar. She learned rapidly and eagerly and did honour to his teaching. Till she reached the age of 13, she had not once been beyond the range of the park by herself. Mr. Linton would take her with him a mile or two, outside on rare occasions, but he trusted her to no one else. Gimmerton was an unsubstantial name in her ears. The chapel, the only building she had approached or entered except her own home. It sucks, man. Wuthering Heights and Mr. Heathcliff did not exist for her. She was a perfect recluse, and apparently perfectly contented. Sometimes, indeed, while surveying the country from her nursery window, she would observe, "Ellen, how long will it be before I can walk to the top of those hills? I wonder what lies on the other side. Is it the sea?" "No, Miss Cathy," I would answer, "it is hills again, just like these." "And what are those golden rocks like when you stand under them?" she once asked. The abrupt descent of Penistone Crags particularly attracted her notice, especially when the setting sun shone on it in the topmost heights, and the whole extent of landscape besides lay in shadow. I explained that they were bare masses of stone, with hardly enough earth in their clefts to nourish a stunted tree. "And why are they bright so long after it is evening here?" she pursued. "Because they are a great deal higher up than we are," replied I. "You could not climb them, they are too high and steep. In winter the frost is always there before it comes to us, and deep into summer I have found snow under that little black hollow on the northeast side." "Oh, you have been on them," she cried gleefully. "Then I can go too when I am a woman. Has papa been, Ellen?" "Papa would tell you, miss," I answered hastily, "but they are not worth the trouble of visiting. The moors where you ramble with him are much nicer, and Thrushcross Park is the finest place in the world." Just reminds me of that Garth Marenghi line. I'm a big girl now, and in a year's time I'll be a woman. Although Catherine too is 13. But I know the park, and I don't know those, she murmured to herself. And I should delight to look round me from the brow of that tallest point. My little pony Minnie shall take me some time. One of the maids mentioning the fairy cave quite turned her head with a desire to fulfil this project. She teased Mr. Linton about it, and he promised that she should have the journey when she got older. But Miss Catherine measured her age by months and said, "Now am I old enough to go to Penistone Crags?" was the constant question in her mouth. The road thither wound close by Wuthering Heights. Edgar had not the heart to pass it, so she received as constantly the answer, "Not yet, love, not yet." It's almost like Nellie doesn't know that when you tell a child they absolutely can't go somewhere, they will want to go there straight away. Why, if she were a villain, what an easy way to be one. I said Mrs. Heathcliff lived about a dozen years after quitting her husband. That's Isabella. Her family were of a delicate constitution. She and Edgar both lacked the ruddy health that you will generally meet in these parts. Exactly. I've got Be Prepared in my head now, and I'm going to have it there forever. Thank you. What her last illness was, I am not certain. I conjecture they died of the same thing, a kind of fever, slow at its commencement but incurable, and rapidly consuming life towards the close. She wrote to inform her brother of the probable conclusion of a 4 months' indisposition under which she had suffered, and entreated him to come to her if possible, for she had much to settle, and she wished to bid him adieu and deliver Linton safely into his hands. Her hope was that Linton might be left with him, as he had been with her. His father, she would fain convince herself, had no desire to assume the burden of his maintenance or education. My master hesitated not a moment in complying with her request. Reluctant as he was to leave home at ordinary course, he flew to answer this, commending Catherine to my peculiar vigilance in his absence, with reiterated orders that she must not wander out of the park, even under my escort. He did not calculate on her going unaccompanied. Exactly. Be prepared, Kathy. Also, peculiar at this point doesn't mean weird. It means like to one person. Nellie's peculiar vigilance. Only Nellie is watching baby Catherine. But it does sound really funny in modern times. He was away 3 weeks. The first day or two, my charge sat in a corner of the library, too sad for either reading or playing. In that quiet state, she caused me little trouble, but it was succeeded by an interval of impatient, fretful weariness. And being too busy and too old then to run up and down amusing her, I hit on a method by which she might entertain herself. I used to send her on her travels round the grounds, now on foot and now on a pony, indulging her with a patient audience of all her real and imaginary adventures when she returned. Interesting, Nellie. Very interesting. Miss Cathy, too, has told you about how her pony would take her over to Penistone Crags, and while her dad's gone, you just sometimes send her out to ride her pony around. Who could have known that that would go wrong? That's probably not Evelyn joining us. That's okay. I'll recap when she does. The summer shone in full prime, and she took such a taste for the solitary rambling that she often contrived to remain out from breakfast till tea, and then the evenings were spent in recounting her fanciful tales. I did not fear her breaking bounds, because the gates were generally locked, and I thought she would scarcely venture forth alone if they had stood wide open. Unluckily, my confidence proved misplaced. Unluckily. Why, Nelly, for a clever woman, it seems you have been quite silly this time. Catherine came to me one morning at 8 o'clock and said she was that day an Arabian merchant, going to cross the desert with his caravan, and I must give her plenty of provision for herself and beasts, a horse and 3 camels, personated by a large hound and a couple of pointers. I got together good store of dainties and slung them in a basket on one side of the saddle, and she sprang up as gay as a fairy, sheltered by her wide-brimmed hat and gauze veil from the July sun, and trotted off with a merry laugh, mocking my cautious counsel to avoid galloping and come back early. The naughty thing never made her appearance at tea. One traveller, the hound, being an old dog and fond of his ease, returned, but neither Cathy nor the pony nor the 2 pointers were visible in any direction. I dispatched emissaries down this path and that path, and at last went wandering in search of her myself. There was a labourer working at a fence around a plantation on the borders of the grounds. I inquired of him if he had seen our young lady. I saw her at morn, he replied. She would have me to cut her a hazel switch, and then she leapt her galloway over the hedge yonder where it is lowest, and galloped out of sight. Shocking! You may guess how I felt at hearing this news. I don't think Mr. Lockwood can guess how Nelly felt at hearing that news. It struck me directly she must have started for Penistone Crags. What will become of her? I ejaculated, pushing through a gap which the man was repairing. Nelly, and making straight to the high road. I walked as if for a wager, mile after mile, till a turn brought me in view of the heights, but no Catherine could I detect, far or near. The crags lie about a mile and a half beyond Mr. Heathcliff's place, and that is 4 from the Grange, so I began to fear night would fall ere I could reach them. And what if she should have slipped in clambering among them, I reflected, and been killed, or broken some of her bones? My suspense was truly painful, and at first it gave me delightful relief to observe, in hurrying by the farmhouse, Charlie, the fiercest of the pointers, lying under a window with swelled head and bleeding ear. Oh no. I opened the wicket and ran to the door, knocking vehemently for admittance. A woman whom I knew, and who formerly lived at Gimmerton, answered. She had been servant there since the death of Mr. Earnshaw. I guess this is Zillah. Ah, said she, you are come seeking your little mistress. Don't be frightened. She's here safe, but I'm glad it isn't the master. He is not at home then, is he? I panted, quite breathless with quick walking and alarm. No, she replied. Both he and Joseph are off, and I think they won't return this hour or more. Step in and rest a bit. Yeah. Well, at least he's not hanging puppies like Hareton. I entered and beheld my stray lamb seated on the hearth, rocking herself in a little chair that had been her mother's when a child. Her hat was hung against the wall, and she seemed perfectly at home, laughing and chattering in the best spirits imaginable to Hareton, now a great strong lad of 18, who stared at her with considerable curiosity and astonishment, comprehending precious little of the fluent succession of remarks and questions which her tongue never ceased pouring forth. Oh, good for you, Cathy, too. You've met your sexy cousin. Steve Holt. Very well, miss, I exclaimed. Oh, hey. Hi, Evelyn. Nellie is just explaining how when Catherine, too, was 13, Edgar Linton went off to Gimmerton because Isabella was dying. So he went off there, well, not Gimmerton, wherever they were. He went off there for about 3 weeks, and Nellie was like, don't ride your pony on the moors. Don't ride your pony near Wuthering Heights. And, yeah, for some reason, Catherine, too, she rode her pony near Wuthering Heights. She went missing, and now she's there. So Nellie's just walked into Wuthering Heights to see Catherine sitting there chatting away to Hareton, who does not understand what the fuck she's on about because He's not very educated and he's 18. I know. The evidence is all there. Why did I doubt myself? Very well, miss, I exclaimed, concealing my joy under an angry countenance. This is your last ride till Papa comes back. I'll not trust you over the threshold again, you naughty, naughty girl. Oh, Ellen, she cried gaily, jumping up and running to my side. I shall have a pretty story to tell tonight. And so you found me out. Have you ever been here in your life before? Put that hat on and home at once, said I. I'm dreadfully grieved at you, Miss Cathy. You've done extremely wrong. Oh, also, Cathy is 13 now and spoiled. It's no use pouting and crying. That won't repay the trouble I've had, scouring the country after you. To think how Mr. Linton charged me to keep you in, and you stealing off so. It shows you are a cunning little fox, and nobody will put faith in you any more. This is very mean. Because Nellie encouraged all of it. Well, what have I done? Sobbed she, instantly checked. Papa charged me nothing. He'll not scold me, Ellen. He's never cross like you. Come, come, I repeated. I'll tie the ribbon. Now let us have no petulance. Oh, for shame. You 13 years old and such a baby. This exclamation was caused by her pushing the hat from her head and retreating to the chimney out of my reach. Nay, said the servant. Don't be hard on the bonny lass, Mrs. Dean. We made her stop. Should fain have ridden forwards, afeard you should be uneasy. Hareton offered to go with her, and I thought he should. It's a wild road over the hills. Hareton is 18 now. Possibly sexy, we don't know. Hareton, during the discussion, stood with his hands in his pockets, too awkward to speak, though he looked as if he did not relish my intrusion. How long am I to wait? I continued, disregarding the woman's interference. It will be dark in 10 minutes. Where is the pony, Miss Cathy? And where is Phoenix? I shall leave you unless you be quick, so please yourself. The pony is in the yard, she replied, and Phoenix is shut in there. He's bitten, and so is Charlie. She went there with a pony and 3 dogs. One of them went home to Thrushcross Grange, leaves the other 2. I was going to tell you all about it, but you are in a bad temper and don't deserve to hear. I picked up her hat and approached to reinstate it, but perceiving that the people of the house took her part, she commenced capering round the room, and on my giving chase, ran like a mouse over and under and behind the furniture, rendering it ridiculous for me to pursue. Hareton and the woman laughed, and she joined them, and waxed more impertinent still, till I cried in great irritation, Well, Miss Cathy, if you were aware whose house this is, you'd be glad enough to get out. It's your father's, isn't it? Said she, turning to Hareton. Nay, he replied, looking down and blushing bashfully. He could not stand a steady gaze from her eyes, though they were just his own. Cathy, too, and Hareton both have Catherine's eyes. Whose, then? Your master's? She asked. He coloured deeper with a different feeling, muttered an oath, and turned away. Who is his master? Continued the tiresome girl, appealing to me. He talked about our house and our folk. I thought he had been the owner's son. And he never said miss. He should have done, shouldn't he, if he's a servant? Cathy. Hareton grew black as a thundercloud at this childish speech. I silently shook my questioner, and at last succeeded in equipping her for departure. Now, get my horse, she said, addressing her unknown kinsman as she would one of the stable boys at the Grange. And you make him with me. I want to see where the goblin hunter rises in the marsh, and to hear about the fairishes, as you call them. But make haste. What's the matter? Get my horse, I say. See thee damned before I be thy servant, growled the lad. You'll see me what? asked Catherine in surprise. Damned, thou saucy witch, he replied. I'll see you damned, you saucy witch. Oh, it's quite a line. There, Miss Cathy. You see, you have got into pretty company, I interposed. Nice words to be used to a young lady. Pray don't begin to dispute with him. Come, let us seek for Minnie ourselves and be gone. But Ellen, cried she, staring fixed in astonishment. How dare he speak so to me? Mustn't he be made to do as I asked him? You wicked creature, I shall tell papa what you said. Now then. Yeah, you saucy witch. I'll see thee damned before I do thy bidding. It's probably going to sound really cool when you say it. I'm going to do it. It's going to sound cool. Hareton did not appear to feel this threat, so the tears sprang into her eyes with indignation. You bring the pony, she exclaimed, turning to the woman, and let my dog free this moment. Such a good book. Softly, miss, answered she, addressed. You'll lose nothing by being civil. Though Mr. Hareton there be not the master's son, he is your cousin, and I was never hired to serve you. He, my cousin, cried Cathy with a scornful laugh. Yes, indeed, responded her reprover. Oh, Ellen, don't let them say such things, she pursued in great trouble. Papa has gone to fetch my cousin from London. My cousin is a gentleman's son. She stopped and wept outright, upset at the bare notion of relationship with such a clown. To be fair, if one of my cousins was a clown, I would probably not want to advertise that fact. Hush, hush, I whispered. People can have many cousins and of all sorts, Miss Cathy, without being any the worse for it. Only they needn't keep their company if they be disagreeable and bad. Oh, Nelly. I have cousins of all sorts. Except sane. I don't have any mentally sane cousins. You'd think out of 30 or 40 there'd be at least one. He's not my cousin Ellen, she went on, gathering fresh grief from reflection and flinging herself into my arms for refuge from the idea. I was much vexed at her and the servant for their mutual revelations, having no doubt of Linton's approaching arrival communicated by the former, being reported to Mr. Heathcliff, and feeling as confident that Catherine's first thought on her father's return would be to seek an explanation of the latter's assertion concerning her rude-bred kindred. Hareton, recovering from his disgust at being taken for a servant, seemed moved by her distress, and having fetched the pony round the door, he took, to propitiate her, a fine crooked-legged terrier whelp from the kennel, and putting it into her hand, bid her whist, for he meant naught. Pausing in her lamentations, she surveyed him with a glance of awe and horror, and then burst forth anew. When a girl is crying, you hand her a puppy. I cannot believe that didn't work on Cathy. Unbelievable. I could scarcely refrain from smiling at this antipathy to the poor fellow, who was a well-made, athletic youth, good-looking in features, and stout and healthy, but attired in garments befitting his daily occupations of working on the farm and lounging among the moors after rabbits and game. Still, I thought I could detect in his physiognomy a mind owning better qualities than his father ever possessed. His father being Hindley, it's very hard to keep up. Good things lost amid a wilderness of weeds, to be sure, whose rankness far overtopped their neglected growth, yet notwithstanding evidence of a wealthy soil that might yield luxuriant crops under other and favourable circumstances. Mr. Heathcliff, I believe, had not treated him physically ill, thanks to his fearless nature, which offered no temptation to that course of oppression. He had none of the timid susceptibility that would have given zest to ill treatment, in Heathcliff's judgment. He appeared to have bent his malevolence in making him a brute. He was never taught to read or write, never rebuked for any bad habit which did not annoy his keeper, never led a single step towards virtue, or guarded by a single precept against vice. I know. I mean, he's He's specifically a handsome stranger. Like, who gave her a puppy when it turned out she started crying. I mean, and from what I heard, Joseph contributed much to his deterioration by a narrow-minded partiality which prompted him to flatter and pet him as a boy, because he was the head of the old family. And as he had been in the habit of accusing Catherine Earnshaw and Heathcliff when children of putting the master past his patience and compelling him to seek solace in drink by what he termed their awful ways, so at present he laid the whole burden of Hareton's faults on the shoulders of the usurper of his property. If the lad swore, he wouldn't correct him, nor however culpably he behaved. It gave Joseph satisfaction, apparently, to watch him go the worst lengths. He allowed that the lad was ruined, that his soul was abandoned to perdition, but then he reflected that Heathcliff must answer for it. It's quite an interesting paragraph, really, for Nellie. It gave Joseph satisfaction, apparently, to watch him go the worst length. The lad's ruined, his soul abandoned to perdition. Is Nellie just talking about herself? You know, that she's really enjoying just not doing things that could make anything better and seeing everyone around her get all fucked up and, upset and killed and such. Joseph had no. Heathcliff must answer for it. Hareton's blood would be required at his hands, and there lay immense consolation in that thought. Joseph had instilled into him a pride of name and of lineage. He would, had he dared, have fostered hate between him and the present owner of the heights. But his dread of that owner amounted to superstition, and he confined his feelings regarding him to muttered innuendos and private commendations. Commendations? I don't pretend to be intimately acquainted with the mode of living customary in those days at Wuthering Heights. I only speak from hearsay, for I saw little. The villagers affirmed Mr. Heathcliff was near, and a cruel, hard landlord to his tenants, but the house inside had regained its ancient aspect of comfort under female management, and the scenes of riot common in Hindley's time were not now enacted within its walls. The master was too gloomy to seek companionship with any people, good or bad, and he is yet. Yeah, get you a man who grieves for 20 years after you die. This, however, is not making progress with my story. No, Nellie, but it's revealing a lot about your thoughts, I think. Miss Cathy rejected the peace offering of the terrier and demanded her own dogs, Charlie and Phoenix. They came limping and hanging their heads, and we set out for home, sadly out of sorts, every one of us. I could not wring from my little lady how she'd spent the day, except that, as I supposed, the goal of her pilgrimage was Penistone Crags, and she arrived without adventure to the gate of the farmhouse, where Hareton happened to issue forth, attended by some canine followers who attacked her train. They had a smart battle before their owners could separate them. That formed an introduction. Catherine told Hareton who she was and where she was going, and asked him to show her the way, finally beguiling him to accompany her. He opened the mysteries of the fairy cave and 20 other queer places. But, being in disgrace, I was not favoured with a description of the interesting objects she saw. I could gather, however, that her guide had been a favourite till she hurt his feelings by addressing him as a servant, and Heathcliff's housekeeper hurt hers by calling him her cousin. Then the language he had held to her rankled in her heart. She who was always love and darling and queen and angel with everybody at the Grange, to be insulted so shockingly by a stranger. She did not comprehend it, and hard work I had to obtain a promise that she would not lay the grievance before her father. I explained how he objected to the whole household at the Heights, and how sorry he would be to find she had been there, but I insisted most on the fact that if she revealed my negligence of his orders, he would perhaps be so angry that I should have to leave, and Cathy couldn't bear that prospect. She pledged her word and kept it for my sake. After all, she was a sweet little girl. End of chapter. That just seals it for me, pretty much. Nellie says, after all of this shit that she basically engineered, oh, if you tell your dad about this, he's going to get really mad and fire me, and you'll never ever see me again. And then Kathy's like, well, no, of course, Nellie, I won't tell anybody because it's terrible if I never see you again. And Nellie's like, that's right. Yes. That seals it for me. It's not a theory anymore. Yeah, I don't have any cats indoors at the moment, I don't think. But Fitz was here earlier. I know, Nellie's horrible. It's not a theory anymore to me. It's absolute truth. I haven't got my other hand free. The next chapter is very short. So I think I'm going to do it because we're only 40 minutes in. And I spent a lot of time blah, 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 at the beginning. So, yeah, I'm going to do the next chapter now. Chapter 19. A letter, edged with black, announced the day of my master's return. Isabella was dead, and he wrote to bid me get mourning for his daughter and arrange a room and other accommodations for his youthful nephew. Catherine ran wild with joy at the idea of welcoming her father back, and indulged most sanguine anticipations of the innumerable excellencies of her real cousin. Nellie's a saucy old witch. Not in a fun way like Nanny Og. The evening of their expected arrival came. Since early morning she had been busy ordering her own small affairs, and now attired in her new black frock. Poor thing, her aunt's death impressed her with no definite sorrow. She obliged me, by constant worrying, to walk with her down through the grounds to meet them. Well, of course, Kathy too isn't that worried about her auntie dying. She never met Isabella, and she's 13, and she's got a new dress. It's just... Linton is just 6 months younger than I am, she chatted as we strolled leisurely over the swells and hollows of mossy turf under shadow of the trees. How delightful it will be to have him for a playfellow. A lot of time what? A lot of time what? What? Aunt Isabella sent Papa a beautiful lock of his hair. It was lighter than mine, more flaxen, and quite as fine. I have it carefully preserved in a little glass box, and I've often thought what a pleasure it would be to see its owner. Oh, I am happy. And Papa, dear, dear Papa, come, Ellen, let us run. Come, run. She ran and returned and ran again, many times before my sober footsteps reached the gate. And then she seated herself on the grassy bank beside the path and tried to wait patiently. But that was impossible. She couldn't be still a minute. Also, I'm glad you're here, Nick. How long they are, she exclaimed. Ah, I see some dust on the road. They are coming. No. When will they be here? May we not go a little way, half a mile, Ellen? Only just half a mile? Do say yes. To that clump of birches at the turn. I refused staunchly. At length her suspense was ended. The travelling carriage rolled in sight. Miss Cathy shrieked and stretched out her arms as soon as she caught her father's face looking from the window. He descended, nearly as eager as herself, and a considerable interval elapsed ere they had a thought to spare for any but themselves. This is like the only nice parental relationship in these books, I think. This book is just one of it. There are many copies of it. Shut up, me, shut up, read the book. While they exchanged caresses, I took a peep in to see after Linton. He was asleep in a corner, wrapped in a war fur-lined cloak, as if it had been winter. A pale, delicate, effeminate boy, who might have been taken for my master's younger brother, so strong was the resemblance, but there was a sickly peevishness in his aspect that Edgar Linton never had. The latter saw me looking, and having shaken hands, advised me to close the door and leave him undisturbed, for the journey had fatigued him. A little boy who just lost his mother is brought from London up to, fuckface nowhere where Wuthering Heights is, and he's a bit chilly and upset. And Nellie's like, "Pfft, this kid's a fucking pussy. This kid sucks." She is a monster. Kathy would fain have taken one glance, but her father told her to come, and they walked together up the park while I hastened before to prepare the servants. "Now, darling," said Mr. Linton, addressing his daughter as they halted at the bottom of the front steps, "your cousin is not so strong or so merry as you are, and he has lost his mother, remember, a very short time since. Therefore, don't expect him to play and run about with you directly, and don't harass him much by talking. Let him be quiet this evening, at least, will you?" "Yes, yes, papa," answered Catherine, "but I do want to see him, and he hasn't once looked out." The carriage stopped, and the sleeper, being roused, was lifted to the ground by his uncle. "This is your cousin Kathy, Linton," he said, putting their little hands together. "She's fond of you already, and mind you don't grieve her by crying tonight. Try to be cheerful now. The travelling is at an end, and you have nothing to do but rest and amuse yourself as you please." "Yeah, don't cry, little recently orphaned boy who lost the only parent he had ever known." "Well, let me go to bed then," answered the boy, shrinking from Catherine's salute, and he put his fingers to remove incipient tears. Nellie's so scornful that this bereaved child is crying and cold. Come, there's a good child," I whispered, leading him in. "You'll make her weep too. See how sorry she is for you." I do not know whether it was sorrow for him, but his cousin put on as sad a countenance as himself, and returned to her father. All three entered and mounted to the library, where tea was laid ready. I proceeded to remove Linton's cap and mantle, and placed him on a chair by the table. He's 11, but he was no sooner seated than he began to cry afresh. My master inquired what was the matter. "I can't sit on a chair," sobbed the boy. Linton knows what's up. "I can't sit on a chair. I don't want to sit on a chair. It sucks. Fuck you for trying to make me sit on a chair." "Go to the sofa then, and Ellen shall bring you some tea," answered his uncle patiently. He had been greatly tried during the journey, I felt convinced, by his fretful, ailing charge. Linton slowly trailed himself off and lay down. Kathy carried a footstool and her cup to his side. At first she sat silent, but that could not last. She had resolved to make a pet of her little cousin, as she would have him to be, and she commenced stroking his curls and kissing his cheek, and offering him tea in her saucer like a baby. This pleased him, for he was not much better. He dried his eyes and lightened into a faint smile. God, what an effeminate little boy, smiling to the first person to show him a little bit of kindness. I mean, Linton does kind of suck, but Nellie is so harsh. "Oh, he'll do very well," said the master to me after watching them a minute. "Very well, if we can keep him, Ellen. The company of a child of his own age will instill new spirit into him soon, and by wishing for strength, he'll gain it." Aye, if we can keep him, I mused to myself, and sore misgivings came over me that there was slight hope of that. And then I thought, however will that weakling live at Wuthering Heights? Between his father and Hareton, what playmates and instructors they'll be. Our doubts were presently decided, even earlier than I expected. I had just taken the children upstairs after tea was finished, and seen Linton asleep. He would not suffer me to leave him till that was the case. I had come down and was standing by the table in the hall, lighting a bedroom candle for Mr. Edgar, when a maid stepped out of the kitchen and informed me that Mr. Heathcliff's servant Joseph was at the door, and wished to speak with the master. Oh man, I can't believe Linton, this bereaved 12-year-old, or however old he is, thrust into a completely alien environment. Uh, you know, Didn't want to be left alone in a pitch black room? I don't know. What a weakling. Starting to hate Nellie quite a lot. So Joseph's here. I shall ask him what he wants first, I said, in considerable trepidation. A very unlikely hour to be troubling people, and the instant they've returned from a long journey. I don't think the master can see him. Joseph had advanced through the kitchen as I uttered these words, and now presented himself in the hall. He was donned in his Sunday garments, with his most sanctimonious and sourest face, and holding his hat in one hand and a stick in the other, he proceeded to clean his shoes on the mat. Good evening, Joseph, I said coldly. What business brings you here tonight? It's Master Linton I must speak to, he answered, waving me disdainfully aside. Mr. Linton is going to bed. Unless you have something particular to say, I'm sure he won't hear it now, I continued. You had better sit down in there and entrust your message to me. I think Joseph sees through Nellie. Which is his room? Pursued the fellow, surveying the range of closed doors. Yeah, he's not leaving his message with you, Nellie. Joseph also sucks. Everyone in this sucks. I perceived he was bent on refusing my mediation, so very reluctantly I went up to the library and announced the unseasonable visitor, advising that he should be dismissed till next day. Mr. Linton had no time to empower me to do so, for Joseph mounted close at my heels, and pushing into the apartment, planted himself at the far end of the table, with his two fists clapped on the head of his stick, and began in an elevated tone, as if anticipating opposition. Heathcliff has sent me for his lad, and I mustn't go back without him. I'm just translating Joseph at this point. You guys know that. Edgar Linton was silent a minute. An expression of exceeding sorrow overcast his features. He would have pitied the child on his own account, but recalling Isabella's hopes and fears and anxious wishes for her son, and her commendations of him to his care, he grieved bitterly at the prospect of yielding him up, and searched in his heart how it might be avoided. No plan offered itself. The very exhibition of any desire to keep him would have rendered the claimant more peremptory. There was nothing left but to resign him. However, he was not going to rouse him from his sleep. Tell Mr. Heathcliff, he answered calmly, that his son shall come to Wuthering Heights tomorrow. He is in bed and too tired to go the distance now. You may also tell him that the mother of Linton desired him to remain under my guardianship, and at present his health is very precarious. No, said Joseph, giving a thud with his prop on the floor and assuming an authoritative air. No, that means nothing. Heathcliff makes no account of the mother. Not you either, but he'll have his lad, and I must take him. So now you know. You shall not tonight, answered Linton decisively. Walk downstairs at once and repeat to your master what I've said. Ellen, show him down. Go. And aiding the indignant elder with a lift by his arm, he rid the room of him and closed the door. Very well, shouted Joseph as he slowly drew off. Tomorrow he'll come himself, and thrust him out if you dare. The end of the chapter. Told you it was a short one. So now we're into WUTHERING, the Next Generation. And the players are Hareton Earnshaw, Kathy Linton, and Linton Heathcliff. Very easy to keep straight. Very, very easy. I remember when I first read Wuthering Heights, I was very young, so I didn't really read much into anything. And I was like, oh yeah, Linton's a piece of shit. What a dummy. But yeah, when you read it as an adult, it's like, these people are pretty horrible. Thank you for being here. That's almost an hour. It's and Danny, wow. I really need to do something for your birthday. I don't know what. I'm how old am I? 34 and 10 months. I I'm an angel. I'm an angel. Yeah, I think all the names are on purpose. It's all very claustrophobic. Just aren't enough names for everybody. Thank you, Nick. And everybody just say, I'm an angel. And it's true. And I will see you all tomorrow, probably. Stay safe. Wash your hands. I'm an angel. Bye.